Hey everyone, Jay here. Time for another intro to Python lab. This lab will be doing overloading of functions the right way using some method of if statements and default values. So let's get started. Uh, if you remember from our previous lab, I had some default values set on our overloaded function, and I said that would be important later. Well, that time has come. Okay, we have our default values. I have a new overload function. I have default values. This time I've set my default values to the keyword none, which means that if you call this function and it has 3 arguments, if you provide anything other than 3 arguments, that remaining arguments will have a keyword value or the value of none, and we can very easily test for a value of none, right? You could use the default value of anything. This time, we in a previous lab, a little while ago, we did set some default values and we set them to be good values. This time we're setting bad values on purpose so that we can easily test for the value that we don't want to have in our final output. Okay, so I have a series of if or elif, if else statements, right? The first one tests if x is none and y is none and z is none. This means that somebody called the function and they provided nothing, not x, y, or z, none of them. It's important to note that you cannot provide these arguments out of order. All right, x is always first, y is always second, z is always third. You can't call it by giving an x and a z without giving a y in the middle. Okay, if you give 2 arguments, that's going to be x and y, and z will be none, and we can always test for that. So I'm testing in order. All of them are none. Then the next one, right, that's going to return no given arguments. Now, forgive my spaghetti code. I have multiple return statements. It's a very simple function. We're just going to go with it, okay? So the first one tests that all of them are none. The second one tests that the first one is not none, and then the others are none. Okay, now this is going to be one argument. Okay, and we didn't have to test that x is any particular value. It's just anything other than none is not none. Okay, and y is none and z is none. Next test is going to be x is not none, y is not none, and z still is none, which means I've gotten those 2 arguments, but not the third one. Last, x is not none, y is not none, z is not none, 3 given arguments, and then I like to always include a trailing else at the end. And this one is just, there's an error, right? If you called this function somehow and you gave it not 0, not 1, not 2, and not 3 arguments, if you gave it 4 arguments, we're still going to have 3, right? We're still going to test y is going to be not none, x is going to be not none, z is going to be not none. Okay, so even if you manage to call it with 4 arguments, we would still fall into one of these things. So this is an absolute error somehow, okay? As this part is never going to happen, but I like to include a trailing else all the time. And if it's something I expect would never happen, I'll write something in here like error, this should not happen, something like that. Right? This should not ever happen. All right, let me clear my output and run this program. Let's see what we're going to run. We're just going to print overload with 0 arguments, with 1 argument, with 2 arguments, and with 3 arguments. You know what? Let's give this 2, or how about 1, 2, 3? How about that? 0, 1, 2, and 3 arguments. The value of the arguments doesn't matter because our function doesn't actually do anything other than test if the arguments are none or not none, and then it outputs a string. Okay, so I'm going to run this. Also, don't forget, right? Never forget your if name equals main, and then you gotta execute the main. Okay, I have been seeing this be missing, in which case your main never runs. If you don't run it, it won't run. Okay? If you don't call it, it won't run. All right, let's run the program here. Have a look at our output. All right, we ran it with no arguments, 1, 2, and 3. It's as simple as that. All right, that's it for this lab. All right, again, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.